Hi, I'm your host Dave Kemp, and this is Future Ear Radio. Each episode, we're breaking down one new thing, one cool new finding that's happening in the world of hearables, the world of voice technology. How are these worlds starting to intersect? How are these worlds starting to collide? What cool things are going to come from this intersection of technology? Without further ado, let's get on with the show. Okay, so we're joined here today by Priti Moudgill. Priti, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Hi, Dave. Thank you for this opportunity. Hi, everyone. I am Priti Moudgill, founder and CEO of Peripherii. Peripherii is based out of Chappaqua, which is a suburb of New York City. Peripherii is a hearables company. We make smart earrings. Think of smart earrings as essentially wireless earbuds that work like earphones but look like earrings. And because of the form factor, they have several advantages over traditional earphones and earbuds. They're very hard to dislodge because they're attached to your ear, which means you can wear them fearlessly without fear of losing them. But the bigger advantage that we have because of the form factor is that they are at your ear when you need them. In the case of earphones and earbuds, you wear them for a few hours and then you put them away. But earrings stay at your ear. And I think this means that people are going to be getting more used to using their smart assistants because they are available at all times. So I feel like with form factors like earrings and smart glasses, the adoption of smart assistants is going to increase. The other thing that's obvious about earrings is that they are a style statement. Mm-hmm. And we realized that women would not want to wear the same earphones day in, day out. So therefore, we made the fronts of the earrings interchangeable. So we have a tech module, and that tech module can work with a number of earrings. So in a nutshell, smart earrings are an amalgam of fashion and technology.
I love that. That's so cool. And, I wanted to bring you on today because, excuse me, I've been following you. I've been following Peripherii for a little while, and I think it's really interesting because I think that it's becoming pretty obvious that this idea of having like a mini computer in and around your ears pretty compelling, as evidenced by just the massive rise in these types of devices, in the longer usage, and really all the utility that's now being built for these devices. And I know that we've talked about this idea of it's not necessarily, I don't think, going to be like a one size fits all. Everybody's going to be wearing the same thing, and there's just going to be this uniformity around everybody wearing the same type of device. I really do think that there's going to be a lot of variety into that. So that's the conversation that I wanted to have with you today. And before we really dive into that, I want to hear a little bit more about Peripherii and sort of the genesis of your company. How did this whole thing come about?
So this was about 4 years ago. A group of us were having lunch, and each of us had our smartphone resting on the table next to our plates. Now, as mothers and working women, we all wanted to make sure that we did not miss any calls or messages from our kids or from work. And the only way to allay that anxiety was to make sure that the screen was in sight. And we used to joke that all the etiquette books that say, where should you put your fork and your knives and your glasses should also have something about where to park your smartphone on the table. And there was also this video about then where the tennis star Serena Williams was at dinner and she had her phone sitting on the table next to her. And this man, he walked past the table, he picked the phone and he just walked away with it. Now, because she's Serena Williams, she chased him down, she got her phone back. But for the rest of us, I think we need to be more careful about how exposed our phone is. And also the fact that if you have the phone on the table, you're distracted. So you're not quite in the moment. So this got me thinking that we needed some way of being connected without having our phones out in the open. There were two fashion startups about then, Ringley and Covert Technologies, and they were both working on notification devices. They both did a great job with their fashion tech devices, but then Apple Watch came out and Fitbit, and they had so much going on with the messages showing up on the screen that neither Ringley nor Covert is around today. But even with the Apple Watch and with Fitbit, we felt there was a gap between the wrist and the ear. I don't know if you've used your Apple Watch to take calls, but it can be awkward to hold your wrist to the ear when you are talking into your watch.
Right.
So it was a confluence of all these three factors that women needed to be connected in a way that was eyes free and hands free, that they needed a wireless headphone solution, and that it had to be near the ears. And so it had to be something that was stylish.
There's a number of things I want to touch on from that. So first of all, the smartphone, like the etiquette of where you put it on the table, that's like, I could see that being like a bit in like a Curb Your Enthusiasm episode. That's so, that's such a funny idea. I think that what you're touching on here is this idea where, you're right. Like a lot of us feel like we do need to be connected, but I feel like we're trying to straddle a fence because you don't want to be so immersed that you're feeling like you're never really in the moment. And I think that one of the biggest downsides, in my opinion, with phones is that you pick it up for a notification and then you just spend like another 3 to 5 minutes on it because it's like that's what it does. It draws you in, it kind of sucks you in. And then before you know it, so much of your time is sort of just being wasted in those minutes of sort of, getting sucked into it because you went in
Right.
there for one thing. And I think that one of the reasons why the Apple Watch is really compelling is that it helps to sort of alleviate that. But just as you mentioned, there are limitations with that. Calls, for example, is a really good one. And I think for me, like, I've been thinking about this idea of, what is the future for wearable technology? And I think one of these first phases of it will be unbundling specific use cases into peripheral devices. Hence your name, Peripherii. I think that's a
Yes.
great name for your company,
Thank you.
because I think that this is really interesting to me because it gets at this idea of you're not necessarily trying to convince the market this is an alternative for anything. It's a add-on to it, and it's a way to augment your current, call it like your technology lifestyle, where maybe you're not really wanting to take your phone out and answer calls that way, so you have these smart earrings that you really rely on for three things. Maybe you like to use a voice assistant in some capacity. You like to call up directions, or you like to order an Uber. You like to check the weather, whatever that might be. You like to receive your phone calls that way, and then you like to stream music. So it's like those three things that you do for this device,
Mhm.
I think is really interesting because it gets at this idea that you can still have your phone, but it starts to create scenarios where you don't need to have your phone with you all the time. And I think that, what you're doing by targeting fashionable females is a subset that I think that would be pretty attractive to.
Yes, I mean, we use the sneaker analogy that sneakers come in all styles and price points and brands, and there's a lot of excitement each time a new style drops, but they're not right for every situation. There are times when a woman will want a stylish or a formal pair of shoes. So, one can have a closet full of Samsung Galaxy Buds and Bose Sound Sport and JBL and Jabra.
Mhm.
But if you're a woman, you will want Periphery at your ears or something equivalent because you don't want something near your face that doesn't work with the rest of your ensemble. So that's how we sort of decided that there was room for more than just the standard earbuds.
I absolutely love the sneaker analogy. I think that is such a good analogy to apply to this context because, I think that this idea of having multiple devices is intriguing. So you'd have, you mentioned like three different devices there. So maybe you're a big Samsung user. You have your Galaxy Buds that you use during the day. You use those when you commute to work. You use them in the office. But then, this is where I think these situational devices and this opportunity for these situational devices becomes really interesting because say that it's a Friday night, you've become dependent. Again, use the trajectory of where this is going, right? So we're not necessarily saying like today, but in like 2 to 3 years, as people become more and more comfortable with relying on an ear-worn device to do certain functions, I think it's fair to say that some people will want that in all situations. But where this kind of breaks down is I don't necessarily want to be wearing AirPods or Galaxy Buds or whichever, sort of like my day-to-day device. I don't want to be wearing those on a Friday night. And I can imagine if you're, this like a fashionable female that, it's a Friday night and you still want to be able to have that. functionality because, like you want to order an Uber and you don't want to be like pulling your phone out to, be able to receive a audio message, from your iPhone. But I think that this idea of having a sort of like a secondary device that functions as a situational device. And these situational devices might be some people's main device too, but I do think that's an interesting idea. And I think the sneaker analogy is so well said there, because you think about shoes and it's the same thing where I wear a certain type of shoe when I go out into the office. And then when it's, I go to a nice restaurant, I obviously wear a different shoe there.
Yeah, in fact, whenever I look at these red carpet occasions, and they're all happening right now, and you see these women posing in these gorgeous gowns, you
Mhm.
cannot see them in AirPods or equivalent. I mean, so I always think like this is absolutely the right place for them to be connected, so they can get messages, so they know exactly where to go and when to go. And even somebody on the dance floor, I mean, you want to be connected. If your parents are calling you, if you're a young woman, so it's something that I think has a place for sure.
I agree. And I think that I know my mom has a Fitbit, and so do a few of my aunts, and they all wear jewelry on top of it to sort of mask it so that it's more fashionable. And I think one of the things that you said right at the beginning that really caught my attention was that, so it's like a it's like a two-part device. You have the tech module and then you have the earring that goes on top of it. And it sounds like you can interchange the earring on there. So you can have, sort of like a multitude of different designs that you can be wearing for this one device. Is that correct?
Yeah, so one of the questions we got right away in the beginning from our customers was, I really don't want to wear the same earring all the time. It's too much of a commitment, especially with earrings.
Hmm.
So we put in a lot of thought into how do you make it very easy for them to interchange the fronts. So the tech module actually has a stem and a speaker portion and the portion that houses the electronics. And the stem has a hole in it. And that hole is what you feed the post of the earring through. So it's a very, very simple way of interchanging the tech module between the
Hmm.
earrings. And also the speaker portion, it hovers over the ear canal. So it's not really sitting inside the ear. And that is something that was really important to our demographic. I mean, most of our future customers said we don't like the idea of something sitting inside the ear.
Hmm.
It looks a little gross when you take out a earbud. You have all the lint on it, and that bothers people. And also the fact that they wanted to be able to hear ambient sounds. Like safety is important, and being able to hear what's going on around you is important to them. So we designed it so that we don't even have to worry about a transparency mode. It's open here, much like Bose's frames. Something that I like about them is the fact that you can hear, what's going on around you.
Yeah, I think that, this idea of different form factors for different, it's almost like different strokes for different folks. Like
Right.
people, I think really, what excites me about hearables is that if a lot of the functionality gets commoditized in a capacity where I think that if you can stream a podcast with any type of device, if you can if you can communicate with a voice assistant with any type of device, if you can call up an Uber, like I just think that certain functionalities are going to become universal. And what is really intriguing about that to me is that it really does then allow for the hardware to be differentiated in a lot of different ways. And so I think that what's so cool about this is that you're giving people options. It's not a one size fit all thing. And it's not like, okay, I don't want to, and it goes beyond just like wearing an earring versus wearing an earbud. You're saying like, well, this is an open ear thing. It's not actually going inside of your ear canal. And so I think that what's cool about this is the more variety, the better, because I do think that this idea of having just like that kind of small little computer right up by your ear in that port into your mind is going to be really, really compelling for people. And I think that if you give them a wide variety of options that they can participate in that sort of, that way in which you I guess like organize your technology. I do think that's really compelling. And I think it's cool that we're starting to see from companies like yours more variety in terms of what that device actually can look like and how it actually sort of resides on your body.
I agree with the commoditization that's happening with technology. I think all of the earbuds will probably have the same level of ease of pairing and the same
Hmm.
frequency profiles and all. So ultimately, the consumer's preference will be about brand desirability and self expression. So there's room for several different options in terms of what people buy for their hearables.
Yeah, I totally agree. So with Periphery, can you share a little bit about, sort of like where you are? I know that you're a startup. I know that you're in some of the different, you've gone through some of the initial startup phases, but can you share with us sort of the status of where you guys are? And then I'm really curious to hear sort of like the broader vision of what you're seeing, kind of like Periphery evolving into.
So very quickly, we made our good enough prototype, our MVP, and we made a short production run. We put them in the hands of our paying customers. And it was interesting. The initial feedback we got was overwhelmingly positive. Our customers were, they said this is insane that something like this works, because we hadn't shown them what the module is, how it works, and they had not been able to visualize, what shape it is and how it works. So initially, of course, they were thrilled with it. We got absolutely no feedback, but as they used it and the novelty wore off, they got back to us with some of the minor issues. One was that my ear canal is not exactly where the speaker is.
Mm.
So for us, that was a very simple change. Instead of one hole on the stem of the post, we made 3 holes. So you could adjust it up and down depending on where
Oh,
the ear
okay.
canal was. So as we got the feedback, we changed things. At some point, they reached the point where they started comparing us to the AirPods, which is the best-selling hearable right now.
Yeah.
So that was good and that was bad. It was good because they want us to be there because they see us as an alternative. The bad news is that now we have to be as good as Apple AirPods in terms of audio quality and ease of pairing. Which brings us to where we are now. We are just starting to look for funding because we need it now. Until now, it was conscious. It was a conscious decision for us to not get VC funding. We self-fund it.
Mm.
But now, because we want to be a serious player in hearables, we are going to look for a VC who is right for us. I mean, the VC firm has to have the right Rolodex, they have to believe in hearables, and they have to be able to really get us there. We're also talking to some of the big manufacturers in the space, and we may have a partnership brewing, but I'll
Exciting.
talk more about it once it happens, maybe early summer. In terms of where hearables are headed, I think hearables are just getting started. Like we've barely gotten past where smart assistants are used to set timers.
Yeah.
You've been talking on your in some of the episodes about all the healthcare potential. There is
Yep.
so much that can be done at the ears, the strong blood supply in the ears, and also because they are a fixed distance away from the heart, they're so much better a place to get blood pressure as opposed to the wrist.
Hmm. Agreed.
Mental wellness is another big one. The hearables have your ear, so you can have anxiety control via a voice that calms you down, say if it detects a high pulse rate. So you have your own personalized whisperer. Like you were saying, you have, access to a person's mind pretty much. Contextual information, that's something else that you've talked about on your episodes. All hearables are going to have a role in this.
Hmm.
From a retail point of view, we're really excited that hearables interacting with store beacons, they can be your personal sales assistant. So they can
Yep.
walk you to the store, find things for you. But the biggest one for us, I think, is augmented reality. I mean, that is something that's going to be huge in retail, in education, and entertainment. And I think hearables are the perfect companion for smart earrings and for all hearables because you need the sound component with augmented reality. And these two technologies together, I think, are going to be huge. And we hope that we will integrate many of these into our earrings.
I could not agree with you more. And it's so cool. I'm so glad that you like touched on all of those different things at the end, because I think that there's a tendency, to think about this stuff and think, well, okay, am I really going to wear, am I really going to own two hearables? Am I really going to have like multiple devices? Am I going to buy a secondary device that I would use in a situational setting? And when you start to really lay out all of these different things, really like the bigger potential of where this is going, and I think you're spot on. I think from a hardware standpoint, hearables are really, really young. And I think from a software utility standpoint, we're truly at the tip of the iceberg. I mean, I think that as voice assistants and all of the different use cases that will stem from the data that can be collected from there, both your biological, physiological data, but also emotional data. I think you get into these really, really interesting things. Then you layer on all of the Bluetooth technology, all the developments that are happening around the wireless technology, and the AR possibilities of that, beacons that can be in retail outfits that, if you have this device that's up by your ear, that's feeding you insight into where you are in a retail store. If you're in a shopping mall, it's like giving you promotional insight around things that you need, and it has that contextual understanding of you. Truly, we are at the beginning of, I think, a really exciting phase of this. And I think what's so cool is like what you're doing is, I think, is you're creating, you're growing the it's like the playing field almost of like people that would feel compelled to enter into this, because I can guarantee, and I know that you would know this better than anyone, but there are probably a lot of like fashionistas out there that, they're not really, maybe they might be intrigued by the premise, but they don't necessarily like the idea of like wearing AirPods around all the time. So you give them this alternative. And I think a lot of this goes for, other devices out there too, where you're enabling more and more people to kind of like get in on the game. And I think that's so cool, because as this all really matures, I do think it's going to become more and more compelling, to the point where you're going to have lots of people saying, yeah, of course I want to have all of that awesome functionality that I get maybe through my, Samsung Galaxy Buds when I go and I commute to work, but it's Friday night. I want to be wearing these things passively. Like, I just want to wear my earrings that also provide me with a level of the utility that I've become so accustomed to.
There's something that I think you had tweeted or somebody else had. Hearables aren't the thing, they get you to the thing.
Carl Thomas, yes.
Okay, I love that statement. But I have to say that with smart earrings, I hope they will also be the thing, that
For
people
sure.
buy them simply because they're smart earrings, and also they get you the thing. So it becomes like both.
Yes. Well, I think it's really exciting what you all are doing. I'm rooting for you guys. I hope that this all pans out for you, because I think it's a really cool idea, and I think that this idea of being more inclusive and designing for different subsets of users, I think is really important. I like the idea of having variety. I love the vision of a hearables future, but I like the idea of there being a whole lot of variety, personalization, people expressing themselves through them. And I think you're at the forefront of all this. So very, very cool stuff.
Thank you, Dave. This was such a joy.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you so much, Priti, for joining me today. And thanks for everybody who tuned in here to the end. We will chat with you next time. Cheers. Thanks for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Future Ear Radio. For more content like this, just head over to futureear.co, where you can read all the articles that I've been writing these past few years on the worlds of voice technology and hearables, and how the two are beginning to intersect. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll chat with you next time.